Hey all. So we're going to do the HL stuff for photosynthesis. Light energy is converted to chemical energy, same as the SL, right? So we're basically going to be working with that same photosynthesis equation that we talked about in SL. So you're going to need um, carbon dioxide, and you're going to need some water, and that's going to make our glucose and oxygen. But there's a lot that happens here. So we're going to talk about like what happens in the light dependent reaction when water is broken, the ATP, like how do we actually make this glucose? So it gets a little bit more complex. In this topic, we're going to be um, drawing it and labeling a chloroplast, and also down here talking about its functions. So there's going to be a lot of similarities with the mitochondrion, which should help the mitochondrion cell respiration. And then basically besides that, there's just two main reactions. There's this one that requires light, and its main goal is to make ATP and also NADPH. And there's the light independent, where its main goal is to make this thing down here, to make our glucose. So we're going to look at those two separate reactions. Okay, let's do it. So let's talk about our chloroplast first. So you need to draw and label a chloroplast. And in 8.37, annotate some of its structures. Not a whole bunch, just a couple of them. So this is what a chloroplast looks like. Here's a more complex one, but this is what it looks like. So it has an outer and an inner membrane, just like the mitochondrion did, right? And this gives us an idea that maybe, just like the mitochondria, there was a prokaryotic ancestor, right? There was a bacteria. Because it has two membranes, it must have gone inside a cell and wrapped its membrane around it. So now you have double membranes that we see in mitochondria and also in chloroplasts. The other thing that's kind of fishy, that maybe it came from a prokaryote, it has ribosomes, and its ribosomes are 70S, just like in bacteria. Another craziness is that chloroplasts have small circular pieces of DNA called plasmids. Another similarity is that chloroplasts and mitochondria are the same size as bacteria, about 1 to 10 micrometers. So yeah, so there's a lot of evidence that supports the fact that this is some sort of symbiotic relationship when a prokaryote ended up in another cell. So when you draw this, make sure you draw the outer and the inner membrane. Also, when you draw this, you're going to need to draw these stacks, almost like stacks of, I'm thinking cookies, coins, but each of these individual stacks is called a thylakoid. And a bunch of thylakoids on top of each other, if we look over here, is called a granum. One granum, multiple grana. So in this picture, there's 1, 2, 3 grana. You have these little tunnels that connect the thylakoids together. These are called lamella. And then you've got something in here, the lumen, or it's also sometimes called the thylakoid space. So I'll write that down here, thylakoid space. And then the last thing that we need to identify in your drawing is this thing called the stroma, and that's just the space in the middle. So let's, for a second, talk about the functions of these and see the similarities in the mitochondria. So the thylakoid here, by having all these stacks like this, you increase surface area, right? So there's more surface area for the sun. If you remember, the chlorophyll is on the surface of these thylakoids. There's more surface area, and we saw that in the cristae of the mitochondrion, right? Also, if you see this thylakoid space, that is where all the protons eventually are going to be located to create that high concentration gradient to make ATP, right? We saw that in the intermembrane space. And last, the stroma is this place where reactions happen, just like in the matrix of the mitochondria.